State of the franchise for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers finished this past NFL season with a 12-4 record, losing in the wild card round to the Cleveland Browns. Now the Steelers have a really interesting offseason coming up because they have a lot of key players who need contract extensions. Guys like Mike Hilton, who is one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL. You got Bud Dupree, who needs a contract extension. Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner. And Pittsburgh doesn't have a lot of cap space. So it is unlikely that Pittsburgh is going to be able to retain all of the guys I just mentioned. Now, Mike Hilton, okay, maybe you can try to find a way to rework some contracts with the team to try to free up a little bit more salary cap to re-sign Mike Hilton. But I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to re-sign Bud Dupree. Now, I understand that Bud Dupree is coming off a season-ending injury, which means that his contract is probably going to be cheaper. But even then, there are still going to be teams that are going to offer Bud Dupree a lot more money in free agency than what the Steelers are going to be able to, even with him coming off a season-ending injury. Now, Juju Smith-Schuster, he didn't really have an incredible season. I'm not going to say that he was bad. He wasn't terrible, but he was pretty good at times. He was above average in my opinion. So for Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe I could see him coming back. James Conner, I most definitely see him coming back because James Conner grew up in the Pittsburgh area. He played his high school ball in Pittsburgh, played for the University of Pittsburgh. So I don't really see him going anywhere. I could see him strongly remaining a Pittsburgh Steeler come the 2021 NFL season. So I would be really surprised if James Conner signs with another team in the offseason when you think about the ties that he has to the area of Pittsburgh. Now, when it comes to Ben Roethlisberger, I do not expect Big Ben to retire because he is going to get paid like, $40 million come 2021 to 2021 NFL season. So it is no way he's going to end up retiring, missing up on that kind of money. So I expect Big Ben to return. But the biggest concern heading into the offseason for Pittsburgh is going to be who is going to be Big Ben's successor. Is it going to be Mason Rudolph? Is it going to be Duck Hodges? Is it going to be somebody in the draft? Is it going to be somebody in free agency? We don't really know. But all we do know as of right now is that Big Ben's playing days are coming down to an end, like we saw in the second half of this past season when Big Ben and Steelers offense really struggled in the last month of the season. Now, Big Ben, I still believe, has at least one more season left in the tank. I don't believe that he has 2 or 3 more seasons. I believe that after the 2021 NFL season that we will most likely see Ben Roethlisberger retire because Big Ben realizes that his body is breaking down. He's not able to perform at the same level that we have been accustomed to seeing Big Ben perform in previous years. So I believe that Big Ben's playing days are coming down to an end. I believe that he's going to come back to collect that check. And after that, he is going to ride off into the sunset. So the Steelers need to prepare for life after Big Ben. Now, we don't know if that is going to be after Big Ben retires, that the Steelers try to address the quarterback situation, or if they're going to try to get ahead of that this offseason, picking up a successor in the draft or free agency, or heck, maybe they believe in Mason Rudolph because Mason Rudolph did look pretty good against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, well, JT, it was week 17. Yes, it was week 17, but Cleveland had a lot to play for in that week 17 matchup. It's not like Cleveland was benching all their starters. Cleveland was trying to clinch their spot in the playoffs because if Cleveland lost, then Miami potentially could have took Cleveland's playoff spot. So for the Browns, they were playing all out week 17. So Mason Rudolph looked really good against Cleveland in that week 17 matchup. And a lot of you guys asked me, how do I feel about Mason Rudolph as a potential franchise quarterback when Big Ben decides to hang it up? I'm not ruling out the possibility of Mason Rudolph being the potential here to Big Ben once he decides to retire. But I don't really have a lot of confidence in Mason Rudolph. Now, I'm not saying that he can't develop and he can't become a pretty above average quarterback in the NFL. I'm just saying I prefer a quarterback with more mobility because me personally, I would like to see the Steelers try to trade for Jalen Hurts in the offseason because they just fired head coach Doug Peterson because they wanted to try to save their relationship with Carson Wentz. So with them trying to save their relationship and try to save face with Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts is most likely going to end up being the backup come the start of next year. So I think that if you are Pittsburgh, I will offer up my late first round pick for Jalen Hurts. Now I know Pittsburgh has a lot of other needs that they have to address aside from the quarterback position. But I mean, for Pittsburgh, and you look at what Kevin Colbert is able to do, what he was able to do last offseason, Pittsburgh had a lot of salary cap issues last year. But Kevin Colbert, being the great GM that he is, was able to work some things, renegotiate some contracts, and free up a little bit of cap space for the Steelers to be able to make some moves like signing Derek Watt, not just Derek Watt, but also bringing in Eric Ebron. So I don't know if he's going to be able to rework things like he was able to do last offseason and be able to retain Bud Dupree, Mike Hilton, James Conner, and Juju Smith-Schuster, but I do expect him to make some moves to try to retain at least one of those guys. I believe that the two most possible candidates to return of being the Pittsburgh Steeler or being a Pittsburgh Steeler come next season, like I mentioned earlier, is James Conner, because you don't really have to pay him all that much. He's probably going to be the cheapest contract to get figured out. Then I probably expect Mike Hilton to return as well, because Mike Hilton is really valuable in terms of how he fits in that Pittsburgh Steelers defense with how to utilize him, not just being the coverage guy, but also blitzing him a lot off the edge in nickel and dime packages. Now, my biggest concern for Pittsburgh moving forward is the offensive line, because this offensive line for Pittsburgh, although they didn't give up a lot of sacks, that's because the passing game with Big Ben trying to get the ball out fast. Now, the offensive line is getting really old. We don't know if Pouncey is going to return. We don't know if he's going to retire. We don't know if he's going to come back for one more season. This offensive line needs a lot of improvement in the offseason. Now, maybe they try to address it in the NFL draft. Maybe they try to rework some things in free agency. But with the cap situation right now, I think the Steelers' best bet is to try to land a couple of impact rookies in the NFL draft. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to want to select another halfback in the upcoming NFL draft, which I wouldn't rule out, but I wouldn't really be a big fan of the Steelers taking another halfback in the NFL draft, simply for the fact that if you have a good offensive line, then naturally you're going to have a good group of running backs. So if you improve the offensive line, it doesn't really matter who's back there at halfback, because I think that James Conner, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jalen Samuels are all more than capable of getting the job done if they have a good offensive line blocking ahead of them. So I'm not really all that concerned about the halfback position. I feel like if you improve the offensive line, then the halfback position should improve as well. Now, the wide receiver position is pretty good. Even if Juju Smith-Schuster isn't able to be retained by the Steelers this offseason, you still have James Washington there, which I think James Washington was really underrated. I think that he was the Steelers' best wide receiver this year. A lot of you guys may disagree with me, but James Conner made a lot of key catches, a lot of big plays, and a lot of big games for Pittsburgh that a lot of Steelers fans don't really give James Washington a lot of credit for. So I think that if Juju Smith-Schuster leaves, you got James Washington, you got Chase Claypool, who is going to be the next great Steelers wide receiver. I mean, there is a lot of talent in that wide receiver room for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you don't need to worry about wide receiver. Your secondary, okay, you don't know what you're going to get out of some of the young quarterbacks on your roster like Justin Lane. I really wanted to see a lot of Justin Lane this season. Really didn't get to see a lot of him. So what's going to happen with Joe Hayden? What is going to be Joe Hayden's future with the Pittsburgh Steelers? But all in all, I think the secondary should be pretty okay. Now, I'm not extremely confident in the secondary, but I think the secondary should at least be decent. Terrell Edmonds has proved me wrong. He has proved that he can be a solid safety in the NFL in terms of how the Steelers utilize him. He has been pretty good over the last 2 years. So the secondary is all right, but my main concern is going to be, okay, what's going to happen with linebacker? Because you know that you're going to have Devin Bush coming back from his injury that he suffered early on in the year that ended his year, but he's going to end up coming back. But what's going to happen with Vince Williams? Vince Williams is getting up there in the age. He's not really all that great in pass coverage. He's a really good tackler, but when it comes to pass coverage, he's not all that great in that department. So linebacker needs to be addressed. Okay, maybe you could improve the secondary a little bit, but if the Steelers are going to make improvements and they're going to bring in some players to, add more depth or bring in more talent, it's most likely going to be during the NFL draft, because the Steelers don't really have that much capital that they can make a lot of big free agency signings in free agency. Now, maybe they could get J.J. Watt, which is a big because a lot of Steelers fans really think that there is a strong possibility that J.J. Watt could get released by the Houston Texans. And if he gets released by the Houston Texans, then I think more than likely we will see him end up becoming the Pittsburgh Steeler, because first, you get him for a really cheap deal because he's up there in age. And plus, I'm pretty sure he would rather take less money to play with his brothers than play for an organization that can offer him a boatload of money that he doesn't really have a chance at winning. So I could really see the possibility of J.J. Watt becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler this offseason, sign him to a pretty cheap deal with him wanting to play for his brothers and things like that. So I can see J.J. Watt becoming the Pittsburgh Steeler. Now, the last thing that I want to address Matt Canada becoming the new offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Almost forgot about that. So Randy Fichtner has been relieved as his duties as offensive coordinator. Matt Canada comes in. What can Steelers fans expect from Matt Canada as offensive coordinator? Well, you can expect him to kind of have a similar offense in terms of what Sean McVay does with the LA Rams. A lot of motion, a lot of pre-snap adjustments, a lot of guys moving on different sides of the field. So I think that you're going to see a lot of Sean McVay-like tendencies and Matt Canada's offense in terms of his play calling. You're always going to see a wide receiver coming in motion. You're going to see some pre-snap motion as well. So that's what you can expect from Matt Canada's offense. I really don't know a lot about Matt Canada in terms of what he wants to do from a concept perspective in terms of routes and things like that. But hopefully his play calling is a lot better than what Randy Fichtner's play calling was in the second half of the year, because Randy Fichtner seems to forget that there's more to playing football than just throwing 5-yard out routes and 5-yard slants and 5-yard drags. You can actually throw the football down the field and try to win football games. So this is it for my Pittsburgh Steelers state of the franchise. Let me know how you guys feel about the Steelers down in the comment section down below. Make sure that you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and college football videos, and thanks for watching.